Jasmine Carter had been a successful black architect before the accident. She designed schools, community centers, places where children laughed and families gathered. She built dreams from blueprints. Her husband Marcus never seemed proud of that. He always found something to criticize, something to diminish, something to make smaller, but Jasmine loved him anyway. She believed marriage meant fighting through the hard parts. She believed love could heal wounds if you just held on long enough. Then came the night everything shattered. Rain poured down like God was trying to wash something away. Marcus had been screaming at her about money, about control, about how she never listened. Jasmine grabbed her keys and ran. She just needed air, needed space, needed to think. Her car wouldn't stop when she pressed the brakes. The wet road turned into a blur. Metal crunched, glass exploded, darkness swallowed everything. When Jasmine woke 3 weeks later, she couldn't move. She couldn't speak. She couldn't open her eyes. But she could hear everything, every whisper, every confession, every plan they made while standing over her supposedly dying body. Marcus and Simone, her husband and her former best friend. They thought she was gone. They thought she'd never wake up. They were wrong. The first voice Jasmine heard was Marcus, cold and detached. The insurance won't pay unless she's declared brain dead. We need to wait, Simone laughed, a sound Jasmine once found musical. Now it cut like broken glass. You've been so patient, baby, but we deserve our life together. She's been holding us back for years. Jasmine wanted to scream. Her body wouldn't respond. She was trapped inside herself, forced to listen as they planned her funeral like they were ordering takeout. Simone wanted white lily. Marcus thought roses were more elegant. They argued about the dress she'd wear in her coffin. They kissed while deciding who would inherit her architecture firm. Nurse Keisha Washington noticed things other people missed. She'd been a nurse for 15 years, working through every kind of family drama hospitals held. But something about Marcus Carter made her skin crawl. He played the devoted husband perfectly for the doctors and staff. He brought flowers every week. He spoke about Jasmine like she was his whole world. But Keisha saw how his eyes went flat when no one was watching. She saw how Simone touched his arm with too much familiarity. One evening, Keisha walked past Jasmine's room and heard them whispering. She pressed herself against the wall outside the door. If she wakes up now, everything falls apart, Simone hissed. She might remember the fight. She might remember you working on her car that morning. Keisha's blood ran cold. Marcus worked on the car, the same car that crashed because the brakes failed. She pulled out her phone and started recording. Every instinct told her this woman's life was in danger from the man who promised to protect her. Jasmine heard it all. Through the fog of her coma, she absorbed their confessions like poison. Marcus had sabotaged her brakes. He wanted her dead. The accident wasn't an accident at all. It was attempted murder, planned and executed by the man who stood at their wedding altar and promised to love her forever. Days blurred together. Jasmine drifted between consciousness and darkness. Sometimes she heard her mother Carol crying beside her bed, praying for a miracle. Sometimes she heard doctors discussing her declining chances of recovery. But mostly she heard Marcus and Simone, their voices threading through her prison of silence. "I want the brownstone," Simone said one afternoon, flipping through a magazine like they were planning a vacation. "And that lake house her grandmother left her. I've always loved that place." Marcus agreed to everything. He was giving away Jasmine's whole life, piece by piece, while she lay there helpless. Then something shifted. Deep inside Jasmine's paralyzed body, something stirred. Her finger twitched. Just once, so small she almost thought she imagined it. But Nurse Kaisha saw it. She gasped and grabbed Jasmine's hand. "Jasmine, can you hear me? Move your finger again if you can hear me." Jasmine gathered every ounce of strength she possessed. Her finger twitched again. Kaisha's eyes filled with tears. "Oh my God, you're in there. You're fighting your way back." Marcus walked in at that exact moment. His face went pale. "What's happening?" Kaisha turned to him, voice shaking with excitement and something else. Something Marcus couldn't read. She moved. "Your wife just moved. She's waking up." Marcus didn't look relieved. He looked terrified. Pure panic flashed across his features before he forced his expression into concern. "Are you sure? It could just be a reflex." Kaisha shook her head firmly. "I've been doing this long enough to know the difference. She's coming back." That night, Jasmine heard Marcus and Simone arguing in heated whispers outside her room. "If she wakes up fully and talks, we're finished," Simone said. "She'll remember everything. The fights, the car, us." Marcus paced. Jasmine could hear his footsteps, quick and anxious. "Then we need to move fast. I'll transfer her to a private facility, somewhere quiet. Somewhere I control her care." But he didn't count on Kaisha. The nurse had already reported her suspicions to hospital administration. She'd documented every strange interaction, every cold glance, every whispered conversation. And she'd made copies of Marcus's requests to increase Jasmine's sedation to dangerous levels. Jasmine pushed harder. Every day she fought to move more, to respond more, to climb out of the darkness. Her fingers moved with more control. Her eyelids fluttered. Her breathing changed patterns when she heard familiar voices. The medical team noticed. They reduced her sedation and increased monitoring. The day Jasmine finally opened her eyes, Marcus was alone with her. He stood over her bed, staring down with an expression she'd never seen before. Cold calculation. "You weren't supposed to wake up," he whispered. "You were supposed to let go. Now everything is complicated." Jasmine blinked slowly. Her throat felt raw. She couldn't speak yet, but her eyes locked onto his face. She wanted him to see that she knew. She remembered. Every word, every plan, every betrayal. Marcus leaned closer. "If you tell anyone what you think you heard, I'll make sure no one believes you. You were in a coma, Jasmine. Your brain was damaged. Who's going to trust the confused memories of a trauma patient over her devoted husband?" But Nurse Kaisha had installed a recording device in the room. Hospital security approved it after her reports about Marcus's suspicious behavior. Every word he just said was captured. Every threat, every admission. The door opened and 3 police officers walked in with Kaisha right behind them. Marcus spun around, shock draining the color from his face. "What's going on?" The lead detective stepped forward. "Marcus Carter, you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." Marcus backed against the wall. "This is insane. I didn't do anything. I love my wife." The detective held up a tablet. "We have recordings of you and Simone Evans discussing sabotaging your wife's vehicle. We have financial records showing you drained her accounts. We have hospital staff testimony about your attempts to increase her sedation against medical advice. And we have a witness who saw you working on your wife's car the morning of the accident." Jasmine watched as they handcuffed him. Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, but from relief, from justice, from the knowledge that she'd survived and he'd failed. Simone was arrested that same day, trying to board a flight to Mexico. She crumbled immediately, blaming Marcus for everything, claiming she was manipulated. The police didn't buy it. The recordings proved she was an equal partner in planning Jasmine's death. Recovery took months. Jasmine had to relearn how to walk, how to speak clearly, how to trust again. Her mother, Carol, never left her side. The architecture firm her partners had tried to steal was returned to her control. Every asset Marcus had drained was recovered and returned. But the real healing came from an unexpected place. Nurse Kaisha visited Jasmine regularly, even after she was discharged. They became friends, real friends, the kind built on trust and shared trauma and mutual respect. Kaisha had risked her career to protect a patient she barely knew. That kind of courage didn't come from duty. It came from character. On the day of Marcus's sentencing, Jasmine sat in the courtroom watching him try to maintain his dignity as the judge handed down 25 years. He'd wanted to give a statement to plead for mercy. But when he looked at Jasmine sitting in the gallery, strong and alive and whole, his words died in his throat. Simone received 15 years for conspiracy and fraud, the judge's voice calm and clinical, as if he were discussing zoning permits instead of stolen lives. She sobbed openly, clutching the edge of the defense table, as though it might anchor her to a world that no longer wanted her. Her mascara ran in dark streaks, her shoulders shaking as deputies stepped forward. She kept looking back, searching the gallery for sympathy, for forgiveness, for someone to save her the way she had once pretended to save others. Jasmine didn't move, she didn't blink. She felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Just a vast, quiet stillness where pain used to live. Watching Simone led away in chains felt like watching a stranger exit a story that had already ended. Some betrayals cut so deep that forgiveness stops being a moral question and becomes an act of self-preservation. And that was okay. Healing didn't require forgiving people who had plotted your death while smiling at your bedside. Marcus was sentenced next. His face was rigid, his jaw clenched, eyes hollow. He never looked at Jasmine. Perhaps he couldn't, or perhaps he finally understood that whatever power he once held over her had evaporated the moment she woke up and remembered everything. Jasmine left the courthouse alone. She rebuilt her life the same way she had always designed buildings, deliberately, patiently, and without shortcuts. First came the foundation: therapy, physical rehabilitation, long nights relearning how to trust her own instincts after years of being gaslit by someone who claimed to love her. She learned that strength wasn't loud, it was consistent. It showed up every day, even when no one was watching. She reclaimed her architecture firm from the legal wreckage Marcus had left behind. The process was brutal audits, lawsuits, skeptical investors who assumed the company's success had died with her marriage. Jasmine proved them wrong with blueprints and balance sheets, vision and discipline. She expanded the firm, not just in size but in purpose. She hired young black architects straight out of school, people with talent who'd been told to wait their turn or lower their expectations. She didn't ask them to be grateful. She asked them to be excellent, and then gave them the resources to be both. Her first major project after the trial was a community center on the south side, built where an abandoned warehouse had stood for decades like a monument to neglect. Glass walls replaced rusted steel. Light flooded the interior. Classrooms, a medical clinic, a child care wing, and a rooftop garden transformed the block. Jasmine named it the Kaisha Washington Community Center, despite Kaisha's protests. "You don't name buildings after nurses," Kaisha had said, embarrassed. "You save lives," Jasmine replied. "That's more permanent than concrete." A year after the verdict, Jasmine stood at a podium in a packed auditorium addressing a room full of medical professionals. Doctors, administrators, students, and nurses filled the seats. Kaisha sat in the front row, hands folded in her lap, eyes shining with pride and disbelief. "I survived because one nurse chose to see me as a person worth protecting," Jasmine said, her voice steady. She could have followed protocol without question. She could have looked away. She could have convinced herself that what she suspected wasn't her responsibility. Jasmine paused, letting the room breathe. But Nurse Kaisha Washington refused to let me become another black woman whose voice was silenced by the people who claimed to love her. She listened when I couldn't speak. She fought when I couldn't move. And because of her, I am standing here today. The room erupted in applause. Some people stood. Kaisha wiped tears from her eyes, shaking her head as if the praise still felt unreal. After the event, they stood together outside beneath a soft evening sky. The city hummed around them, traffic, laughter, distant sirens, life continuing as it always did. "You gave me my life back," Jasmine said quietly. Kaisha smiled and squeezed her hand. "No, honey, you fought your way back. I just made sure no one stopped you." Jasmine exhaled, emotion catching in her throat. "Then we saved each other." They embraced, two black women who had stared down evil and refused to let it win. One had been underestimated because she was a patient, voiceless, unconscious, and vulnerable. The other because she was just a nurse, invisible in the hierarchy of medicine. Together, they had proven that power doesn't always come from titles or authority. Sometimes it comes from refusing to stay silent when someone needs defending. Marcus sent letters from prison, apologies, explanations, promises of repentance written in careful handwriting. Jasmine burned them without opening a single envelope. Some stories don't need closure. Some chapters need to stay closed. She had spent enough of her life giving him power over her emotions, over her body, her future, her sense of reality. Now she chose peace. She chose herself. She chose the future she was building, one where love meant safety, partnership meant equality, and marriage meant respect instead of control. She learned that loneliness was not the worst fate. Losing yourself was. The firm thrived. Awards followed. The community center opened to music, laughter, and children racing through its halls like it had always belonged to them. Jasmine attended the opening not as a survivor being honored, but as a woman standing fully inside her own life. And every morning when Jasmine looked in the mirror, she didn't see a victim. She didn't see someone who barely escaped death. She saw a survivor, a woman who had been underestimated by the people who thought murder would be easier than divorce. A woman who had fought her way back from the edge of the grave because she refused to let their greed and cruelty be the final chapter of her story. Evil thrives in silence. It depends on people looking away, on victims being too weak, too frightened, or too invisible to speak. But truth has a voice that refuses to stay buried. Jasmine Carter had been silenced by a coma, by betrayal, by a husband who valued money more than her life. But she had heard everything. She had remembered everything. And when the moment came, she let the truth speak for her. Sometimes the most powerful thing an underestimated woman can do is simply survive. And sometimes survival itself becomes the revolution.